Hello dear friends, you're on the Ruslan Bailov channel, and this is the daily Frontline update from Ukraine. So friends, the situation in Pokrovsk continues to develop rapidly, and not only in Pokrovsk, but also in Mirnohrad, where the Russian army achieved another breakthrough, managing to enter the central southern part of the city. And not just enter, but literally drive in on armored vehicles. Imagine that. Russian local command is often criticized for moving in columns on armor, but here they managed to drive an armored convoy straight into the southern center of the city. They rolled in, dropped off an assault group, and that group began clearing house by house. And this isn't some tale or exaggeration. There's actual footage showing Russian armored vehicles moving in, dismounting troops, and the infantry clearing residential buildings in the area of Senaya Street and Hliboki Lane in southern Mirnohrad. What does this indicate? Not just progress, but the fact that Russian troops were able to enter on armor and withdraw safely without the vehicle being hit, shows that Ukrainian forces are struggling even with drone control, let alone direct fire control. That means the defense of Mirnohrad has effectively collapsed. And why? Because things are going extremely badly for Ukrainian forces in Pokrovsk. The city is rapidly falling under Russian control at incredible speed. Look at the map. Over the past 24 hours, roughly speaking, we've seen a complete collapse of the defense line. The entire central part of Pokrovsk, everything up to the railway, is now under full and stable Russian control. The Biop central zone with the church, where Ukrainian troops held out for more than a week in isolation, has finally been cleared. But without supply lines, they simply couldn't last. There was no logistics, only heavy drones could deliver supplies, but even that failed. Russian drone operators and snipers were taking down those heavy drones, the ones popularly called Baba Yaga, used by Ukrainian forces to drop food and ammunition. Additionally, Russian troops cleared the Hornyak microdistrict, a large block of multi-story residential buildings, both near the railway and in the southern sector of the city. All those dozens of apartment buildings are now under firm Russian control. The central market and bus station have been cleared, as well as the eastern village of Ro and the adjacent residential streets of Pokrovsk. The village of Ro is now fully under Russian control, together with all surrounding private houses. To give you context, remember how I mentioned earlier that Russian troops had started checking the documents of local residents? Well, as of November 3rd, evacuation of civilians from Pokrovsk has already begun. Those who stayed and waited for Russian soldiers are now being moved to safety. And that happens only when an area is fully secure, when you don't even fear drones anymore. As I said, Ukraine has now completely lost drone control here, or at least it's heavily degraded. Yesterday, reports confirmed that Ukrainian drones in Pokrovsk have practically disappeared. The only possible launch point left is the settlement of Hryshine. Meanwhile, Zelensky and Sursky keep feeding their citizens propaganda, claiming the situation is under control, the city is being cleared of occupiers, and other nonsense. Just yesterday, Zelensky said that in 2 days the Russians achieved no success in Pokrovsk. Yet at the same time, Russian forces are calmly evacuating civilians from the city. Moreover, Russian troops are now advancing solidly in the northern part of Pokrovsk. Ukrainian forces are trying to escape through the fields. The roads are all cut off. There's no exit anymore, only surrender. In the north of Pokrovsk, Russian units have reached the industrial Dinas plant, cleared it, and taken the entire facility under control. And remember, a factory like that is, by definition, a stronghold. How long did it last? Just 1 day. After the Ukrainian defense collapsed, Russian troops not only captured the factory territory, but also advanced toward the nearby high-rise Dinas micro-district. There's video evidence of Russian assault troops operating there. Reports indicate that a Ukrainian group has been surrounded in this area, and Russian soldiers are now eliminating them unless they surrender. The entire private sector around has been cleared. On the northern edge of the city, Russian forces have also advanced by nearly 1.5 kilometers, along Svobody Street and Nevskogo Street, reaching Kharkivska Street and Filatova Street. So what's left for Ukrainian forces in Pokrovsk? A few high-rise blocks in the north, a portion of the industrial zone where fighting continues, and a small private area. That's it. Given the current pace, Pokrovsk might fall not by the end of the month, as we previously assumed, but possibly by the end of this week. Realistically, by mid-month it's all over. Everything is collapsing too fast. Another positive update for the Russian side. Troops have already officially entered Hryzhin, meaning the advance is now moving northwest from Pokrovsk, further worsening the situation for both cities. Most likely, both Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad will fall completely under Russian control by the end of this week, after which a new front line will be established. Of course, the full clearing operation may take another 1 or 2 weeks. There are simply too many houses to check, and some Ukrainian soldiers might still be hiding or planning ambushes. Now let's move to other sectors, because progress has been reported elsewhere too. Good news arrived from the Orikhiv sector in the Zaporizhzhia region. Russian troops managed to advance significantly in Malotokmachka, reaching the center of the village. Though, to be fair, this success is largely the result of the earlier October assault, when a 2-day offensive improved Russian positions near Orikhiv and partially in Malotokmachka. Now the outcome is clear. Half of the village is under Russian control. Fighting continues in the part of Malotokmachka, closer to Orikhiv. On this axis, there are 3 key settlements forming a unified defensive line: Novoandriivka, Novodanilivka, and Malotokmachka. The first 2 haven't shifted much, but in Malotokmachka, Russian forces are steadily advancing. Moving on. Updates also came from the Kostyantynivka sector, but before that, let's briefly discuss the Dobropilya salient, since many are asking. What's happening there? It's tough. Ukrainian troops sometimes achieve local success. Most recently, they managed to move east of Novoshakov and push forward slightly. However, the settlement itself remains under Russian control. Local fighters confirmed yesterday that the village is still held. But the situation is complicated. Additionally, north of Rodinska, Ukrainian forces have started a new push to unblock their garrison in Myrnohrad, hoping to open a corridor for retreat, since escaping now is practically impossible. So right now, the hottest fighting is taking place north of Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad. Now, to the Kostyantynivka direction, Russian troops are advancing in Ivanopilya, the last village preventing them from reaching Kostyantynivka. They've entered the southern part, secured a foothold, and even advanced slightly. The area is extremely difficult. Battles are fought for every single house, and progress is slow. And finally, something unexpected: progress on a front that had been static for years. It's hard even to name this sector. You could call it the Solidar area, as it's nearby. Russian troops entered Vasyukivka and advanced roughly 400 meters through the residential zone of the village. Is this the beginning of something bigger, or just a one-time breakthrough? Time will tell. I can't tell you exactly. When was the city of Solidar taken under control? At the beginning of 2023. Which means nearly 3 years have passed, and the front line has moved only 3 to 4 kilometers away from the city. That's an absolutely dead sector. Nothing moves there, nothing changes. So there's no point in making forecasts. We can only state the fact: Russian forces entered Vasyukivka. Fighting is underway. We'll see what comes of it. Let's move on. And you know, if there are problems, I never hide them. I try to talk about them openly. So yes, the Russian army does have problems in Yampil. Ukrainian forces managed to counterattack there and retake part of the positions in the area of 1st of May Lane and Partizanska Street. Russian units had to pull back slightly. It's very, very difficult in this area. Fighting for this small, urban-type settlement has been going on for over a month, and as you can see on the map, the outcome is still far away. What's more, Ukrainian forces have even achieved partial success. And now, what can I tell you in conclusion? Kupiansk. Yesterday, Zelensky claimed that there are only 60 Russian soldiers left in the entire city, and that Ukrainian forces are finishing the cleanup and will soon take full control of Kupiansk. No comment. Former Ukrainian Deputy Defense Minister Vitaly Deneha wrote in panic, "If someone doesn't urgently sign the order to withdraw troops from Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad, we may face not only the loss of a large number of our most motivated paratroopers and Marines, but also equipment worth hundreds of millions. It's gone, and there's no chance to evacuate it. We may soon reach a point where there's simply no one left to plug the hole in the front, and our reserve fortifications in the rear will quickly fall into the enemy's hands. That's what Danaha wrote. Reports from the Kyiv General Staff are becoming more and more detached from reality, full of lies. In fact, Kyiv has already practically lost Pokrovsk, and that means there's no point in holding Myrnohrad either. The only remaining logistics routes run through open fields under constant risk. This isn't some secret. Russian forces see everything from their drones in real time. This situation must be recognized, and those soldiers who refuse to withdraw without orders must be saved. If a former deputy defense minister writes such things publicly, it means he'd rather face public hatred than keep silent. That's what the Telegram channel Mutiny reported. All this proves that the situation for the Ukrainian armed forces is critical. Zelensky is lying when he says everything is under control. For those trapped at the bottom of the pocket, there are zero chances to escape. According to the most conservative estimates, the 25th Airborne Brigade will suffer catastrophic losses. It may simply cease to exist. The Pokrovsk cauldron is draining all Ukrainian resources. Next, the Russian army will advance rapidly toward Dobropilya, and then the fall of Kostyantynivka will follow. After that, total collapse will be inevitable within a year, unless Kyiv accepts Russia's current terms. Otherwise, the only outcome will be capitulation. The General Command has completely failed this operation. Responsibility lies squarely with the Kyiv office and the High Command. Also yesterday came reports that the 35th Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces lost its elite. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, an Iskander missile strike wiped out elite drone operators, key specialists, and the best infantrymen of the 35th Brigade. They were lined up for a ceremonial award ceremony, and right at that moment, a ballistic Iskander missile struck. According to a Ukrainian journalist whose brother was among the dead, the number of casualties is extremely high. There's now a major scandal over this incident. Now let's look at the political arena. According to Financial Times, 42 million Americans will lose their food assistance cards because of the US government shutdown. For the first time in over 60 years, funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, has been halted. The cause? The suspension of government operations. In the previous fiscal year, 42 million low-income Americans received food cards worth around $100 billion. The budget for the current year still hasn't been approved. SNAP accounts for 12% of total food spending in the US, and it's also a key source of income for over 250,000 grocery stores, from Walmart to local markets. Economists warn that the suspension of SNAP will reduce overall consumption in the US. People will buy less food, and in some cases even stop paying for utilities, car rentals, or housing just to save money for groceries. According to Heinz, consumer sentiment in the US has fallen to a historic low. Meanwhile, Corriere della Sera reports that Italy, France, and Belgium oppose the confiscation of Russian assets. In the early years of the conflict in Ukraine, Western financial aid kept growing, from 74 billion euros in 2022 to 89 billion euros in 2024. The aid came mainly from the United States and the European Union, with the American contribution far exceeding the European one. But this year, President Donald Trump refused to allocate further funds to Ukraine, leaving it entirely to Europe. The situation is catastrophic. EU budgets simply cannot cover the required funding, while the Russian army keeps advancing. The only remaining option discussed is the confiscation of Russian assets, most of which are frozen in Belgium. However, the European Union remains divided. Fearing economic and political consequences, Italy, France, and Belgium oppose the move. Earlier, Bloomberg reported that Russia would respond to any confiscation by nationalizing and selling Western companies on its territory. Anti-Russian sanctions will continue to destabilize and divide the Western bloc even further. That's all for today's update, my friends. Thank you for watching and staying with us till the end. Stay tuned, stay informed, and as always, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. See you in the next report.